On to next. Who has big data? Who has the biggest data? Bigger. Mine's the biggest. I got the biggest data. It's the biggest and best. So, welcome to the stage, David Giard, talking to us about the biggest of datas.
Thank you. My name is David. I work for Microsoft. This is my 10th consecutive year at CodeMash and my first CodeMash lightning talk. I'm very excited. I want to talk. Go ahead, chair. I want to talk to you about cloud computing. Cloud computing is when you take some or all of your data or your application and you move it to some third party, like Microsoft, and have them manage it in a highly scalable, highly reliable way. And of course, Microsoft does have Azure, which is our cloud computing platform, and Azure has a lot of advantages. The one that most relates to big data is this idea of scalability, because big data is in fact big. It's a lot of data and it's a lot of processing power, but more than that, the processing power that you use tends to be in short bursts. You use a lot of power for a little while, and you use, and then those machines sit idle for a long time. So it's great to be able to scale out and use lots of compute power that Azure provides, and pay for it while you're using it, and then not pay for it at all when you're not using it. And that's a really big advantage of cloud computing. When Microsoft decided to implement big data on Azure, rather than building their own solution, they took a popular solution called Hadoop. And Hadoop is a big data solution that consists of a lot of tools, and I'm going to talk about a few of them right now that are implemented on Azure, and we've just branded it as HD Insight. That's our name for our implementation of Hadoop on Azure. And the big advantage of this is that it allows you to create computer clusters that work together and will run your applications in parallel. So that rather than running one machine for 20 hours, you can run 20 machines for 1 hour. And then when you're done, you shut them down, so you stop paying for it. Essentially, you're renting instead of buying compute power. It makes it easy to create these clusters for your solutions. These are the tools I'm going to talk about, but creating a cluster is very simple. In the portal, you can go and create, just select to drop down the type of cluster you want, whether it runs on Linux or Windows, and within about 20 minutes, you'll have a cluster of computers to go. And that can be an HBase cluster. HBase is a big data store. It is a NoSQL database. NoSQL is kind of a strange word. It just means that it isn't a relational database like SQL Server, but it does have tables, and those tables differ from SQL Server in that they don't do things like, you don't have to predefine columns ahead of time. You can just start naming your columns in your client application and pushing them into HBase. You can add columns in families. It won't enforce referential integrity. It won't generate row keys for you. Some of the things that you expect a relational database to do, it doesn't do them. You have to do that in the client, but the payoff for that is that it becomes really scalable and really fast. You can scale it to literally petabytes of data. Petabytes are thousands of terabytes, so huge scalability is what you can get from this. And there's a REST API that you can use to add, insert, update, and delete rows in here, access them by the row key, and there are toolkits if you want to write C# code to do that as well. Storm is for doing workflow in Azure. You can add, if you have data coming in from, say, an IoT device, you push it into something called a spout, and you push it in as tuples, which are just sets of name value pairs, and those push it off to these various things called bolts. And bolts are just little components that do things like save data to a data store, or lookup values, so turn IDs into words, maybe clean up the data a little bit. And you pass these tuples along from one to another. You can change them as you want. These are easy to do in .NET. There's a template, file, new project that you can use. Altogether, this combination of spouts and bolts are called a stream, and that's all supported inside of .NET, and you can deploy it to Azure. Hive is a data warehouse engine that allows you to query your data and do visualization, for doing analysis of your data. So there is a language very similar to SQL called HiveQL, and with that you can query HBase data, you can query SQL Server data, you can query data of various data types, and you can even join them together to aggregate data and do reports on that. Fully supported in HD Insight and available for clustering to make it more performant. And SPARC is a tool for visualizing your data. It contains libraries that integrate with Power BI. It contains libraries to do graphing like GraphX and MLib. And it supports some open source tools, most notably one called Jupyter Notebooks. And Jupyter Notebooks are a popular tool for generating reports because they support a combination of text and dynamically generated code that dynamically generates visualization. So you can create a report with a description at the top of it, and then below that the data and the visualization that it displays will be based on your data at the time that you run this report. And you can create these right inside of the browser. They're named Jupyter, because often that code that you write will be in Python. It's a really popular tool among the Python crowds. So these are the advantages of HT Insights. These are the tools that are available in HT Insights. A couple things you want to, gotchas, if you try to do this, you can go to Azure.com right now and sign up for a free subscription and use it. Be careful that you don't create a cluster and then leave it running, because you pay by the hour. What you want to do is create one, and then when it's done doing its work, then shut it down and recreate it later on, which is the reason why a lot of people will script the creation and deletion of those structures. You can use PowerShell to do that. So you can create it in the portal, or you can write scripts to do this. But the big advantages are that it's based on a popular open source software. So if you're already doing big data and you just want to take advantage of Azure and the ease of clustering and the scalability, you can very quickly move to that. It's a big cost saving over, for example, doing everything on-house. My name is David, and I thank you for your time.
Great job, thanks. All right, petabyte sounds like my cat. Pet bite. Oh well. However, I will say I did learn one thing. Did you know that PowerShell is still a thing? Who knew? Who knew?